Hey guys, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we're going to talk about the part 2 that I actually filmed yesterday regarding the adjustments that we can make for our orchids as they grow. Today we're going to talk about a related subject, which is root rot. It relates to the subject of yesterday through pot size and actually anticipating what type of pot you should use for an orchid, even though it might not have roots. So there is a connection, it's just a different subject. And before I start, I just wanted to thank you guys so much for all of your comments yesterday. I am filming the intro the next day. That was really heartwarming and I really appreciate all of your comments. I read them all and I'm really happy that you still enjoy my videos as they are. Alrighty, let's get to the subject. Let's go back a little bit to the pot size though, because this situation relates to pot sizes as well. You might already know that many articles or people suggest that if you have a rootless orchid or with an impaired root system, it is better to place it in a smaller pot. Some articles actually give some reasons, and from what I understand, the main reason is that the bigger the pot, the more water it will retain, therefore it will favorize root rot. That's really not necessarily true. Furthermore, potting in a too small of a pot for the particular orchid poses quite a few difficulties that I happened to went through quite a lot of years ago, and I learned my lesson since then. So let's take for example this orchid. She's a big orchid, and let's presume she doesn't have roots. If I would follow the articles, I would pot her up in a much smaller pot. Now what happens is that with orchids which are already big and mature and multiple structures, let's say in the case of sympodials, well, their root systems will be big as well. And if you have the luck to have a rootless orchid that has multiple structures with energy stored, they will create a root system pretty fast. And that root system shall not be tiny at all. Phalaenopsis are actually prone to do this. They're massive root creators. But I had issues with the cherry baby, if you can't believe it. My first ever cherry baby. That guy is a massive root producer as well. The first time I got my cherry baby, it didn't have too many roots. I potted it in a tiny pot, even though it had 4 massive pseudobulbs. What happened was that in 6 months, it completely took over the pot. What did that mean? A lot more water from my part. Yet again, same issue. Not economical. The orchid started to get dehydrated. I was using bark chips that do not retain water even with a plastic pot. The outcome was pretty much the same because the materials I used kind of canceled themselves out. Therefore, I was forced to repot within 6 months into a proper sized pot. Now, what's the problem with that, you might say? There are some problems with that. First of all, we might disturb the roots, and that's not funny when we are dealing with a recuperating orchid. It would be ideal not to mess around with the fresh root system, right? Root tips might be broken, growth might be stalled. However, let's say we manage to unpluck the orchid from its pot and put it in a different pot. We don't even need to change the medium, even if it's bark chips, because it's not already degraded, at least not up to a point in which it needs changing. Well, that's a problem. Just because the current medium is not yet super degraded doesn't mean it's not degraded at all. And as we know, organic medium has a pretty limited lifespan. So what we would do is just unplug the orchid, put it in a bigger pot, fill up with medium and leave the current medium inside. In the middle, usually. What happens is that medium is already a little bit more degraded than the medium around it, therefore it retains more water and it makes that water available to the new medium around, therefore speeding up degradation to the medium around it, because degrading bacteria and microbes need water to properly work. The more water you provide, the bigger the colony will be. We already have a partially degraded medium that will continue to degrade due to the fact that it's in the middle. It will be even moist, it will degrade even faster. So let's say in 6 months, the medium is degraded 10%. It doesn't mean that in 1 year, it will be degraded 20%. No, it usually works like it's degraded 10% in 6 months. In a year, it will be degraded 40 or 50%. In the second year, it can 100% be totally degraded. So in the end, very not efficient. Why didn't we just put it in a bigger pot? Well, because we were afraid of root rot. But root rot doesn't work like that. So let us debunk the myth of root rot. Now, root rot in the vast majority of cases is an effect. It means the roots were damaged or they died and now they're simply going through the normal process of decomposition. Unless we have a factor, a disease that actually affects the roots, a fungal disease usually, root rot is simply an outcome of roots dying. Now, roots can die because of many reasons, but in our case, let's say it is suffocation. Roots of orchids need to breathe, they need to exchange gases. If we do not provide air to the root system, obviously they do suffocate and they die and then root rot. How do we suffocate roots? Well, pretty much with compacted medium. How do we get compacted medium? In case of sphagnum moss, we can compact it ourselves. Even if it's fresh, it can still suffocate roots, or it can get compacted in time due to root growth pressing down on it. Water also helps because it is a dense material. It fills up the air pockets, therefore root suffocation. Coupled, of course, with that colony of bacteria and maybe fungi and so on thriving on that humidity, because a compacted medium tends to stay more moist, the idea that a bigger pot can induce root rot is pretty logical. Because no matter how big the pot is, if the medium is not compacted and suffocating, the roots will not suffocate either. Air is not this thing that is so easy to void a certain container of. We do not have voids, it's not like space. As long as there is free space, such as in this pot, air will be present there as well. The only way we can rest assured that there is no air in our pot is by substituting this space with something denser than air, such as water, such as medium. Of course, if we compact the medium, we take away all of the air pockets. But if the medium is not compacted, the air pockets will still be there, and they will not be void. They will have air. Even if you don't have ventilation holes, they will still have air. Air particles will find a way to get there. So, no matter how much water we have in a bigger pot, that alone is not enough to lead to root rot. A more correct way of thinking about things is not that we don't have air in the pot, but the rate of refreshment of that air. Think about when you're sick and the doctors tell you, open the windows and refresh the air every day. Well, he doesn't tell you that because you are consuming the air inside and you'll run out of air. No, you just need to refresh the air. In a closed space, microbes and bacteria will accumulate. By opening the windows, you are letting those accumulations out and introducing fresh, clean air. The same with pots. We put ventilation pots simply to refresh the air inside the pot, not to offer air. Air will continuously be there if the medium is not compacted. Refreshing the air in the pot has a lot of advantages. It reduces bacterial and fungal accumulations. Even in a big pot, if we provide ventilation on the sides coupled with the ventilation from the top of the medium, coupled with an airy medium that is not compacted, has air pockets, that only results in a much better environment inside the pot, no matter the size. We can also play around with the materials we use. We can use in the center, which yes, usually tends to stay a little bit more moist, materials that are chunkier, and maybe on the outside the materials that are responsible with water retention. We can play around with many things and actually make the setup more efficient in time. Therefore, we can avoid the stress of actually repotting an orchid after a few months because it doesn't have space anymore. But I think this is a little bit too complicated for articles to explain, although they should actually explain it in my opinion. I think they rather take the lazy route. They tell you, hey, put it in a smaller pot to avoid root rot. So using an appropriate sized pot for our orchid is actually a lot more beneficial as long as we understand the implications. Therefore, we avoid the situation of 6 months later, my orchid is getting dehydrated, it requires too much water, too much effort, I don't have time, I need to go to work, and all of those issues. Also repotting issues. So choosing the pot will have to do with the orchid, not with the root system. In the case of a back bulb, front bulb, seedling, yes, we will offer a tinier pot. This orchid will not create an abundant root system. It doesn't have energy to do so. But this one will. If I were to place her in a smaller pot right now, 3 months from now, I will have issues. So bottom line of this video is that your orchid will continuously grow and will require adjustment from your side. You can make this adjustment in care and in your lifestyle by thinking a little bit how the orchid will evolve in the future and making the changes from now. It is perfectly normal for orchids that grow bigger to require more water, but if they require so much watering that you become frustrated and incapable actually to maintain your orchid hydrated, then obviously there is an issue with the setup. It might be pot size, materials used, and so on, and it's always better to identify the real problem rather than finding solutions to cure some symptoms. You kind of need to go to the source, and it's a much better life afterwards with that orchid. So yeah, it's a good sign that our orchids grow and they require a little bit more from us, but they should never require an arm and a leg, you know what I mean? So I hope you found this video useful. I need to repot all of my Phalaenopsis. I put it off because they were in bloom, but now I really need to repot my Phalaenopsis. And it's gonna take so much time, but there you go, my girls are growing. So you know the drill. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe to my channel for regular orchid and plants videos, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And I think tomorrow we will actually repot a Phalaenopsis just to see what's going on inside the pot. So let me know if you're up for that, for repotting videos. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye.